In our previous lecture, we explored some terms in Java programming and how those terms relate to Android programming. We looked at variables, both parameter variables and local variables, and methods and classes. We also took a look at some common mistakes that happen with those terms, like forgetting to add a semicolon, or assigning the return type of a method to a different variable type rather. Also leaving off curly brackets. We looked at some common mistakes like that. In this video, what we're going to look at is how we can relate a screen or a layout like the one we have here to the class that supports that layout. So this is a paradigm that we see more often now, where we have a layout like the one we're looking at here, which is written in XML, and then we have a class with some code in it that supports that layout and does things like operates on button clicks. Microsoft Silverlight works in a similar manner. Also, Microsoft C# has the concept of a code behind page. That's what we're seeing here. So XML makes the layout. It makes the layout in a user-friendly term, and then we do some kind of operations on that layout in a class in the background. So you'll see a separation of duties here. You'll see a layout that can be very easily manipulated, but then we have to figure out how we're going to match that layout to this code. So we're going to learn one more term in this video, and that is something that has several different names. Some people call it an attribute, some people call it a field, some people call it a member variable, but essentially it's a variable that instead of being defined within a method is defined within the class itself. The benefit of that is that all methods in that class can access that variable. On the other hand, if you have a variable that's declared within a method, that variable is only accessible within that method. And by within that method, what I mean is the variable can only be accessed from the point where it is declared until the closing curly of that method. Now, there are some special cases. You have things like if tests and for loops, where you can have variables that are even more finely scoped, but that's out of scope for this session. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the layout that supports this activity. If you take a look here, you're going to see a method call. Okay, remember, calling a method is different from a method itself. Calling a method is like dialing your friend's phone number and calling your friend. You've just entered your friend's phone number, but that's actually ringing your friend's phone. Okay, so this is where we're making a call to a method. In this case, we're calling a method called setContentView, and we're passing it something called a constant. It looks kind of funny if you don't know what it is, but this is the constant, r.layout.activitySearchPlants. What that's doing, if we go into our project here, what that's doing is under res layout, you'll see there's something called activitySearchPlants.xml. So this line here is associating this layout with this class. Okay, here's our class in the Project Explorer. Let me expand that so we can see it. So this line here, setContentView, is associating this layout with this class. Now we can add more widgets to the layout because right now it's kind of dull and boring. It just has a hello world and a search. We can add more widgets to it, and when we do that, we need to figure a way to get data out of those widgets. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into this layout, and we're going to see this is what's called a WYSIWYG editor. Okay, one moment. Okay. A WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. And I apologize, at the moment my Eclipse is frozen up. It'll come back in just a second. A WYSIWYG means what you see is what you get. And this can take a moment to render. But what you see is what you get means we can drag things from a menu or some kind of choice, and we can drop it onto a canvas, let's say, or a screen. Okay? So in this case, this is a case where I'm going to strongly recommend a shortcut. If you look at the Eclipse right now, you see all kinds of buttons and scroll bars, and it gets very cluttered very quickly. And it's very hard to work in this manner. My strong recommendation to you is click on your layout, as I've just done, click inside your layout, hold Control, and then press the M key. What that's going to do is that's going to, as you just saw, take that little window and expand it so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so let's dress this up a little bit. If you recall in that last screen, we were doing some math. Okay, we were doing a little bit of math. So we're going to make this screen eventually, the screen we're looking at right now, it will eventually be a search screen. We'll repurpose that in a little bit, but for the moment, we're going to continue with our math example. So first of all, hello world, we want to change this. I'm going to right click on it, that text. The text doesn't really make any sense, does it? I can right click on it and choose Edit Text, and we come up with something called Resource Chooser. Now, it's not as easy as right-clicking or double-clicking and changing the text that you see in there, but for a very good reason. We want to take all of the text that our end user can read and put it in a separate XML file, put it in a separate file. Now, why do we want to do that? We want to take all the text that our user can read on that screen and put it in one file, one XML file, basically a plain text file. Why would we want to do that? Think about that for a second. The reason is we have to remember, especially in Android programming, that we have a very international audience and we want to be able to support multiple languages. So if you take every string that's readable and you put it into an XML file, you can give that XML file to a translator and have that person go through and translate every word in that file. It's something I did on plantplaces.com. It natively supports Spanish. So now I translated a lot of it myself with the help of Google Translate. So probably it's, it probably has a few errors in it. But nonetheless, if you can support multiple languages, you will definitely have a bigger market footprint. And that's important not just because you have more customers, but you might be in a market where you have less competition. Okay, a lot of apps are written for a US-based audience or an English-speaking audience. If you know another language or know somebody who can help you translate and you can target specifically other countries, you might find you have less competition and more downloads from those countries. So it brings up this little window here. What I can click now, I want to click New String. It'll take just a second. And first I need to give the string a name. I need to give it some unique identifier. The unique identifier cannot have spaces or any special characters. So I might call this, actually, you know what? Let's make this the GPS screen. How about that? Let's call this new r.string.lbl GPS a plant. Okay, and the title is going to be GPS a plant, something like that. Okay, and then we'll choose OK. It's going to take just a moment, and then when we go back to our WYSIWYG editor, we're going to see that that label has changed. And we choose OK here. And just a moment, it should refresh. Uh-oh, went away, didn't it? Okay, sometimes we have to go under the hood. So we'll go under the hood and see if we can fix this. Just a moment. Somehow it went away. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, well, I see our text view. Let's try one more time. Maybe I clicked too fast. And with a little off-camera assistance, I fixed it. I simply right-clicked, choose Edit Text, and then chose that LBL GPS a plant, and now it's fixed. So we have a label, which is a text view. I have a PowerPoint up on Blackboard that describes this, but needless to say, I think we can get the idea by doing a bit of drag and drop here. The important thing about a text view is that the user cannot change it. It is read only. The user can't write anything to it. It's called a text view. So text view, a label saying GPS a plant. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to go to text field, and we're going to choose plain text. Okay, you see there are a lot of different options here, a lot of pre-configured options, which are very nice. I'm going to go ahead and choose plain text, and let's see if it'll let me drag and drop this in. Looks like it's taken just a second. And notice that as I mouse, it does what's called a relative alignment. It tells me that this is going to be below text view 1, which is that label GPS a plant, and it's going to align left to the search button. So I could also move it like so. I could say to the right of text view 1 and below text view 1. You kind of see those arrows and how it's helping me line this up. This is your best friend. You don't want to do a lot of absolute positioning where you say pixel by pixel where something goes. It's better to put things relative to each other because that's a more liquid layout, and that's going to help us when we do things like support multiple resolutions. So I'm going to drop my text right here. My mouse button is still clicked. My left mouse button is still clicked. I'm going to release that left mouse button. Oh, what was that? Okay, align left. Yeah, that's fine. Align left, text view 1, below text view 1. Okay, and I'm going to drop. Now you see it's kind of overlapping the search button, so what I can do is I can take the search button, drag it down, tell it to align left to edit text 1, and put it below edit text 1. Now everything is flush left, and everything is one right after another. So what we're going to have here, I probably want to put a label up here as well that says, maybe enter a description of the plant. So let me take another text view. Remember, that's read only. And I'm going to put this, let's see if we can align left. And okay, we're almost there. Align left, text view 1 and below text view 1. That's good. Okay, now I'm going to resort a little bit. Align left and below. And you see it's really easiest to work top down if you're doing a relative layout. It's best to put the very first element on the page first and then the next and then the next. It's a little more tricky when you have to insert something between two existing elements. Okay, so in text view, I'm going to edit the text just like we did before. I'm going to choose new string. Remember, the name has to be unique and it has to be a name without spaces. So I'll say LBL and then we'll say description. Okay, and for the string I'll say description of the plant. Okay, and we'll choose OK. Okay, and once again we'll choose OK. Okay, now for this edit text here, you see I click on it. When I click away and then click back on it, you see when I click on it, it has little blue boxes on it that shows what it is. Because this is an edit text, it's something where the user can enter data. This is something I'm going to want to make use of very soon. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say edit ID. Edit ID. ID is the unique identifier for this edit text. It's a unique identifier for this edit text. You definitely want to do this on any of these widgets that you're going to be programming against, because you're going to want to refer to them in code and you want a name that's going to be memorable. If I click there, we'll see the current ID is edit text 1. If you leave it like that, you're going to end up with edit text 1, edit text 2, edit text 3. You're not going to remember which one's description, which one's genus, which one is name. It's really a good idea to rename these. So I'm going to call it EDT edit text, EDT for short, and then we'll say description. Okay, and then we'll choose OK. Okay, and I'll choose save or Control S. Okay, so EDT description, remember that. What's happening in the background is that Android is making a unique identifier for this editable text. It's making a unique identifier for this editable text. We can use that unique identifier to refer to this component, this editable text component, in our activity. So let me click back to the activity. Now I have to warn you, this part is a little bit tricky, but what we want to do is we want to make a variable here that will hold the edit text, okay? The edit text component, the physical widget on the layout. So I hit enter, enter, and notice where I am. This is what we would call a field or an attribute or a member variable. I am within the class itself because we see the open curly that starts the class and it matches with the closed curly for the class. So I'm within the class itself, okay? But I'm not within a method, okay? So here's a method, and here's a method, and here's a method. I'm not within a method. I'm right here in this area that's within the boundary of the class, but not within the boundary of a method. Think of this like a township. So you might have Hamilton County, and within that, so Hamilton County is the whole class. Cincinnati would be one of the methods. Norwood would be another method. And then there's all the unclaimed area in between, which belongs to the townships, like Sycamore Township, Sims Township. So we're out here kind of in the townships and in an area that doesn't belong to a city. And what I'm going to do is remember what we put on this form. We put something called an EditText. That's the name of this component. It's an EditText component. So what I need to do is, and I'll put this in comments, declare a variable that will hold a reference to the EditText component on the screen. Notice that I started with 2 slashes, and specifically that's the slash to the left of the shift key, and then I put a comment. Comments, you can put whatever you want. They don't compile into the final program. They're more like notes to ourselves. So I choose enter, and then I'm going to choose edit text, capital E, then DIT, then capital T, EXT, edit text, and then I'm going to say description. And then I'm going to terminate with a semicolon, and I'm going to save. And we see immediately we get a red line. And the red line, we know that when we get a red line, we want to fix it right away. Sometimes red lines are inevitable, and we have to fix them. This one says edit text cannot be resolved to a type. What that means is we're referring to this thing called an edit text, but our program doesn't know where to find that edit text. So what we need to do is we need to tell it where it can find that edit text. We can do that with something called an import statement, and that's what it's hinting for us to do here. But I'll tell you an easy fix to this. If you type in a variable type like this and you get a red line because it's not recognized, first of all, double check your spelling. Make sure you spelled it correctly. Also make sure you haven't put any spaces in it. Once you're satisfied with that, Control-Shift-O. Hold down Control-Shift and O, and what you're doing is you're telling it. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to put something into that variable. And the best place to put something into that variable is within the method onCreate. You might have noticed we didn't actually write this method onCreate. That was given to us by Eclipse. That was given to us automatically. Because onCreate is what we're going to call a lifecycle method. It's a method that gets called during the life cycle of an activity. As a matter of fact, as you might guess from the name onCreate, this method gets called when the activity is initially created and made available. So what I'm going to do, with my cursor at the end of a line, in other words, beyond the semicolon, but with my cursor still within the method body itself, and the method body is the area between the open and closed curly, I'm going to put my cursor at the end, and I'm going to choose enter. And now I need to do something that's a little bit tricky. I need to call something called FineViewByID. Okay? I can start typing find capital V. I can start typing FineViewByID. And let's say, gosh, what was the name of that method again? Maybe it was find something or other. It's kind of a long-winded method name, isn't it? FineViewByID. It's a lot of words, and you might forget the capitalization. Don't worry, Eclipse is here to help you. What you can do is you can just start typing find V, hold down Control and hit space, and then Eclipse will auto-complete it because it has a pretty good idea of what you want to do. Okay, now notice that within this FineViewByID, we're kind of in a little area where we have some choices to make and we have the word ID highlighted. Here what we're going to do is we're going to say r.id. Take a look. Does anything here look familiar? The r.id is a given. You always have to do capital R.id. That's a given. r.id is a given. Okay? r.id. And then what do we have? Look, there's our friend EDT description. Remember when I told you to change that? EDT description, I told you to change it to a name that you would recognize, and here we are. Here's a name we recognize. So I'm going to go ahead and choose enter, or I could click it with my mouse. But either way, as soon as I choose enter, it's going to fill this box with r.id.edt description, and we're almost home free. Okay? Last thing I need to do is simply terminate the line with a semicolon, and now you see my red lines are gone. I'll Control S to save, and we're in good shape. So we have a little trick. This method is going to give us access to that edit text, but the variable is declared up here. Let me turn on line numbers so we can see this more clearly. Okay, the variable is declared up here. We need to take the stuff that's returned from this method and store it into this variable. So how do we do that? Take stuff, assign to variable. Well, remember when we did our sum, remember we said an equal sign is the assignment operator. It means do whatever on the right, assign it to the variable on the left. Do whatever you see on the right, assign it to the variable on the left. Okay? Similarly, take a look at this line that we had from yesterday. We're invoking a method. That method has a return type. Okay? We're invoking a method. That method has a return type, which means it's going to return some data. We're storing that data here in a variable called value of type int. That's the same thing we want to do here. What we want to do, though, is we want to assign what comes out of this method to this variable. So we're going to say description equals FineViewByID. Now we have just a little bit more work to do. Just a little bit more work to do to get this working. And that's where I say this is a multiple step process that takes a little bit of, step-by-step analysis. We have to explain that what we get from here, that we're storing in here, is indeed an edit text. So we have to do something called casting. If you get a red line, a lot of times it will give you a helpful hint, something to help complete the phrase. I mouse over this red line, and I'm going to choose Add Cast to Edit Text. And there we go. Now we're all set. The red lines are gone. So now what we've done, and we don't always have to do this, just in certain circumstances, we've explained that this is a method I'm going to call. I'm going to store it in this variable, and I'm certain what I'm getting back is something called an edit text. Okay, and now we're all set. And we say Control S. Okay, now let's do a few more things. So we know we have access to this edit text. Now let's go into search clicked. Okay, and what we're going to do is we want to display something down here. We have the sum of 1 and 2 is, and then we have a value. So we want to display something down there. Instead of saying the sum of 1 and 2 is, why don't we display what the user has entered into this description? Okay? Now remember, why did we make this an attribute? I tend to call them attributes. You can call them fields or member variables if we want. But what's the advantage of making something an attribute? If it's an attribute, it's declared within a class, and that attribute is available to every single method in that class. So in the onSearchClicked, take a look at this. I can say description. Okay? And what I can say then is I can call a method on it called getText. Okay? GetText will get whatever the user has entered. Okay? GetText will get whatever the user has entered. Okay? Notice I don't get a red line. Notice instead description is in blue. Okay? And notice I've accessed it now in at least 2 different methods. Okay? That's because it is indeed an attribute which is accessible in all of our methods. Now I said that description.getText will return to us whatever the user has entered into that text field. Okay? We want to store that in a variable. We want to store that in a variable, and we know to store the result of a method call in a variable, we require this equal sign, and then we require a variable on the left, just like we have here. Making a method call, making an assignment statement, variable goes on the left. Okay? So, there is something Eclipse will do to speed things up, though, which is really nice. First, we need to do one thing. After getText, put another period and then .toString. This is a little tricky. What it's doing is we're calling 2 methods chained together. That's just the way that we get text out of an editable field. Now, here's where it gets cool. Put your cursor on toString, hold Control, and press 1. And what you'll see here is that Eclipse makes suggestions based on where you are. It looks at what you're doing and it tries to help you out. In this point, it gives us a couple of options that might work for us. 1, assign statement to new local variable. That means assign whatever we get back from this method call to a variable, declare that variable inside of the method. The other option is assign statement to new field. That means take whatever we're getting back from this method call and create a new variable and assign the output of this method to that variable, but make that variable rather, be an attribute, something that's up here, declared within the class but not within another method, so that all methods can use it. We just need a local variable here, so I'm going to say assign statement to new local variable. As soon as I do that, it actually creates, that was kind of fast, but you might have seen, it creates here a variable, declares a variable, puts in that equal sign, that assignment operator, okay? And that is prepared to store whatever we get back from these method calls here, okay? It knows that these methods are going to return a string. So a string is a data type, it's a variable type that represents text, basically. Notice that the data type is string. It knew that by looking at what this method returns. But the variable name is highlighted now because it doesn't know what we want to call it. Let's call it, I can just start typing because it's highlighted. We'll call it str description, something like that. And there we go. And Eclipse has done a lot of work for us. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this literal string here and delete it. I'm going to highlight it and choose delete. And then I'm going to say str description plus value. So what we've done is we've now made this, oops, I misspelled description. What we've done now is we've taken what used to be a static text pop-up and we've made it basically repeat whatever the user types into that box. Okay, let's watch this work. I'm going to go ahead and save, and I'm going to Control M, which will bring me back to windowed mode. Okay, bring me back to windowed mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on our project, and I'm going to choose, this time I'll choose Debug As, and I'm going to choose Android Application. Hopefully it still recognizes my emulator I have up. If it does, which it does, it's going to save us a lot of time. Once you have an emulator up, go ahead and leave it up because you can continue to deploy to that emulator. It doesn't actually have to load that emulator, and that'll save you quite a bit of time. Okay, so we'll let this load. I might pause it because it might take just a few moments to build and load, and then we'll take a look at the result. And sure enough, here it is. I'm going to try and fit this on our screen as best as I can. Okay, you see we have the new fields that we added. What I'm going to do now is type I like Fuji apples. Okay, the emulator is a bit slow, so it takes a bit to recognize my keystrokes, but there we go. Now I'm going to hit search, and let's look at this pop-up that will appear down here. I like Fuji apples 3. Okay, it's still doing that math. But take a look. I like Fuji apples 3. Did you catch that? Let's say I like Gala apples. Okay, and I choose search. And we know we're going to repurpose this. We're just doing some demos here. I like Gala apples. Okay, so what we see is that we're able to enter something on our emulator, and we're able to take that data and do something with that data. In this case, what we've done is we are collecting the data, storing it in a temporary variable, and then we're displaying that temporary variable in a pop-up. So we're getting close to the 30-minute mark, so I'll go ahead and cut this video off, but in a video that we'll do soon, we'll actually take a look at the debugger as well. The debugger is really nice because we can look step by step at absolutely everything that's going on. So what did we learn in this video? What are some good quiz question suggestions? We learned what an attribute is. We learned how to get an item off of the layout, off of the XML layout, cast it, store it into a variable. We learned how to get a string that a user entered, And we learned that if we click on the toString, hold down Control and press 1, it will offer us a way for Eclipse to go ahead and declare a variable for us of the correct type, the correct return type of that method, and then assign the result of this method to that variable. And we also saw we could put a variable into a toast or into a pop-up. We saw that our layout editor is a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. And we can drag and drop and put things on that WYSIWYG editor. So we'll go ahead and leave it at that. We'll come back in a moment. We're going to look at how to put this up on Git, and we're also going to look at a debugger. I look forward to joining you then. Thank you.